Well, I guess we'll get started right on time here. Welcome to the 2024 annual meeting of the Belfast Community Co-op. I'm Susan Cutting, Board President, and really glad to see you all here, and also welcome folks on Zoom. A couple of housekeeping things to start with. There are 2 bathrooms in the back, and food as well. Help yourself. You can feel free to get up during the meeting. Take care of your needs. And if anyone is having trouble seeing the PowerPoints, there are a few copies in the back of printed out PowerPoints, so you can grab one of those if that would be helpful. I guess I'll start out with introductions. We have most of the board here today. We have Ernie Cooper, Vice President. Colin Thompson there is helping folks with Zoom or Zoom contact. We have Valerie Tate, our secretary, John Kruger, treasurer, and Rio Greeley, board member. Jim Miller will be the timekeeper today, and Babette Cohen-Salal. And 2 board members couldn't make it today, Corinne Burr and Sasha Breas, but they send their greetings. And of course, we have Doug Johnson, General Manager. So I wanted to start out asking for you all to introduce yourselves as well. If you could choose somebody sitting near to you, who maybe you haven't spoken with in a little while, or maybe you don't know, and answer 2 questions, or ask 2 questions. One, who you are, and secondly, just a word or 2 about what you love about the co-op. Just 1 or 2 words, maybe 3. And folks on Zoom, if you could do that on the chat as well, that'd be great. And I'll give you 1 minute. I can just copy it. Okay, we can just wrap it up. So there's going to be more time to chat after, but yeah, going to have to get back to the meeting here. So if you could go back to your seats, and there'll be more time to talk after. Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask, we have 3 candidates running for the board here today, and I wonder if the 3 candidates could stand up. There's Valerie Tate, and Todd Bloom, and Charles Sturbeck. If you haven't had the chance to speak with them yet after the meeting, I think they'll be sticking around a bit to talk as we're cleaning up. Thank you. And I also would like to ask the co-op workers if you would be willing to stand and be recognized. Thank you, co-op. Thank you all for coming. So we traditionally start our meetings with a reading of the ends, and I've asked Rio if he would read the ends for us.
Thank you, Susan. So our ends are kind of a big importance and kind of why we do what we do. So our global ends, number 1, is a thriving, just, and local food economy. So we strive for local food. Number 2, a source of healthy, nutritious food and water. It's very important that everybody has the means to survive. Number 3, an efficiently managed, democratically governed, inclusive, cooperative enterprise. It's very important to us that we are democratic in the way we run our business. Number 4, a greater understanding of health, food systems, cooperatives, and an economic and environmental sustainability. We very much want to make sure our business model is sustainable and does not harm the environment. And number 5, an invested, engaged, empowered staff that thrives in a safe, respectable, inclusive, and equitable workplace. That one is particularly important to me as a former staff member. It is very important that we make sure our staffs get the support they need to live their lives. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rio. And I've asked also Ernie to read the 7 cooperative principles.
Yes, the Belfast Community Co-op is one of thousands of co-ops, not just in the United States, but around the world. And co-ops have joined together to talk about, well, how do we operate? And the International Cooperative Alliance some time ago developed 7 principles under which it's hoped and expected that all co-ops will operate, and the Belfast Community Co-op does too. These cooperative principles are open and voluntary membership, democratic member control, members' economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation among cooperatives, and concern for the community. So you can, if you want more information about any of those, we can get it to you.
Thank you. And then just going to go over the ground rules real quick here. Remember to silence cell phones, raise your hand when you want to speak, keep attentive, be fully present, listen and share with empathy and respect, be concise and avoid repeating what has been said, and enjoy. And ensure all voices are heard. This is what we used last year. Are there any additions or changes to the ground rules for today? So we're good for these? Then that's our plan. I think that's so. Agenda review is next. Mike. And I forgot to mention we have Mike in the back helping us with technical issues. If anything comes up online, you can communicate through Colin, who is watching the chat for folks on Zoom, and he can help work with Mike too about technical stuff. So we did the working agreements and today's agenda. So we'll be, after my report, we'll hear from Doug Johnson and from John Kruger, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So just asking folks if you have any questions or comments, if you could hold them until our Q&A session, and we're going to make sure we have time to hear from everyone. If for some reason we don't get to all the questions and comments, Valerie Tate is going to be keeping track of questions, and so to make sure that we can get back to you. So we'll take note of them. And that's the plan for the day. So one of the reasons why I feel proud to be part of the Belfast Community Co-op is that as owners, we have taken on a pretty big goal to co-create a thriving, just, sustainable food economy. So how do we do this? Through featuring locally grown and produced products. And I'm also wondering if there's anyone here who thinks there might be other ways we can be doing that as well. Like, for example, increasing food accessibility. Anyone think that might help in that endeavor? Or what about through contributing to other important local causes? Or how about providing a safe space to serve as a community hub? So our co-op has been instrumental to the emergence and growth of the local food economy for 48 years. And in 2023, we topped our efforts in this work in so many ways. This past year, shoppers bought locally grown and produced items to the tune of $3.8 million. We broke records in common sense donations to nonprofits, totaling over $73,000 in those contributions that you make at the register roundup. And the co-op, in addition to that, gave $19,000 to local nonprofits. This says so much about who we are, our values, and how we're making a difference in our community. We are committed to accessibility and inclusivity in serving our community. We've long made local, organic, wholesome foods more affordable to the many members of our community who receive economic assistance through Farm Fresh Rewards, EBT SNAP, TAMP, HEAP, SSI, and now WIC, the nutrition program for women, infants, and children. We became the first co-op in Maine to offer to serve shoppers who are paying with WIC, and in the process have influenced the WIC application process and options. Our co-op is growing. We passed the 5,000 owner mark last year, with 572 people becoming new owners of the co-op, and more existing owners became fully vested this year than any year before. And we are expanding to meet our community's increased demand. In 2023, we began perhaps our greatest undertaking ever, renovating and updating systems for our 60-year-old building to ensure that we can continue to provide our essential service as a downtown community hub for decades to come. I am floored by the grace and power that our co-op community has demonstrated in rising to this challenge. Owners loaned and donated $1.6 million in addition to the $4 million construction loans from our like-minded lending institutions. The community also continued to support us through their shopping. We hit multiple record sales weeks over the summer, even as the store's construction work ramped up. The board has been working hard in our role representing you. Connecting with our owners was a top priority this past year. Through the capital campaign, we spoke with many of you and found so much inspiration from those conversations. Our owner engagement committee helped organize 2 owner forums tabled in front of the store and at the Belfast Street Fair and the Marshall Wharf Annie and the Rainmakers event. And we also held the Cabin Fever Reliever dance party, celebrating our owners and our workers and our overall community. We'd love to hear your ideas about topics and for future owner forums or other events, so please drop us a line. Our board development committee has been improving our internal procedures as well as the candidate election process, and we're creating a new board strategic work committee. The board is also lucky to have such a skilled and knowledgeable finance committee that has been working extra hard with Doug as we monitor and explain renovation costs to the board on top of all the usual co-op expenses, financials. I want to thank our committed team of board officers. You do so much. And I thank the whole board for your wonderful service to our co-op. It goes without saying that none of the 2023 successes would have happened without our co-op workers. Thank you to Doug Johnson and the management team for your tireless leadership throughout this challenging time. The board thanks all of our workers for your extra effort, and as one owner wrote, your stellar customer service, your ability to be resilient as the store systems, walls, and more changed around you. This has been inspirational. Finally, I want to thank you, board Belfast Community Co-op owners, for your encouraging words, your financial investment, and your involvement during this time of growth. As our broader culture evolves, the co-op is evolving to meet our changing community's needs. We are all doing this, growing our co-op together. Through nurturing our connections, we are creating a better future for our community and our world. So next is on the agenda is Doug Johnson, General Manager.
Let me use the podium.
Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. I am Doug Johnson. I'm the General Manager of the Belfast Community Co-op. I've been the General Manager since late 2015, and I've been with the co-op for just over 12 years. All right, next slide, Mike. All right, so 2023, how did we do? We broke all of our sales records this past year. We had $11.9 million in sales. That's 4.6% sales growth over the previous year. And to keep that in context, we started, our fiscal years run from October to September, and we started construction in May. So the majority of, a lot of the year we were in construction and still able to reach those sales goals. And as Susan mentioned earlier, we surpassed 5,000 owners this past year, which is a huge milestone for the co-op, and 619 of those are fully vested. All right, next slide. All right, so I do this every year at the annual meeting and also for our workers at our worker meeting. So this is the penny exercise. So if you think of all the revenues that come into the co-op, if you think of that as a $1 bill, and then break that up into pennies, this is how all of our expenses and how our revenues break down. So so there's 100 pennies up on the board. Mike, if you click the next one. Yep. All right, so the biggest expense for us is cost of sales. So out of that 100 pennies, 63 of those are just purchasing the products before we can even put them on the shelves. So 63% goes to cost of sales. The next biggest chunk is personnel costs. That's 26 more pennies out of that dollar go to wages and benefits for all of our workers. We the beginning of this fiscal year, we increased our starting wage for all workers to $15.75. We have probably 95% of workers at a livable wage as measured by the MIT living wage model. So good wages, good benefits, trying to keep as many workers invested and engaged in the co-op as we can is a high priority. Go ahead and click again, Mike. All right, so let's see. Occupancy, administration, marketing, governance, all those expenses, that's another 8.5 pennies. Click again. So that's discount, right? And then click one more time. Well, yeah. And then click one more time, Mike. So at the end of our fiscal year, we ended up at just around 1% in negative net. Oh, all right, we can go to that one. All right, so this chart is tracking sales growth over time. So this is starting in fourth quarter 2016 and running up until the last quarter in our last fiscal year. So you can, the trend there is that sales growth over time, even though there's lots of ups and downs over time, our sales have grown consistently over that period. The big spikes, COVID, so that changed the way that the graph was tracking, but in general, continued sales growth over time. Next slide. All right, and similarly, this is net income. This is showing net income from 2016 up until 2023, the end of 2023. So even though lots of ups and downs, if you look at you can see the trend line consistently growing net income over those years. Next slide. EBITDA. So EBITDA is something that John, I think, is going to talk a little bit about when he does his treasurer's report. It stands for earnings before interest, taxes, amortization, depreciation, and patronage. So it's essentially operating expenses. And you can see on the chart, again, continued EBITDA growth over the years, even though there's lots of ups and downs. Days of cash on hand. That's next slide, Mike, sorry. Days of cash on hand. So when we were looking at the renovation project and trying to figure out what we could afford to do and what we were able to pull off, days of cash on hand became a good metric. It's something that we watched very closely. And as you can see, again, an upward trend. Next slide. This again, that's another illustration of sales growth over the years. So from 2018, 8.6 million into this last year, 11.9 million. Next slide. All right, $3.1 million in wages and benefits paid out to co-op workers in the past year. 90% of workers at a livable wage. The average wage for workers being $19.24, and the average tenure of co-op workers at 3.9 years. Right now, we currently have around 85 co-op workers. The majority of those, I think 71 out of that 85 are full-time, and we have another 14 that are part-time workers. Coming into the summer months, and when we reopen the renovated store, we're hoping to bring on, we'll probably be close to 100 co-op workers by the time the store opens in June. Next slide. $3.8 million in local sales to local farmers and vendors and producers. 32.2% of sales coming from over 200 local farmers and producers. Next slide. As Susan mentioned, so this past year, bringing WIC online, being the first co-op in the state of Maine to offer WIC products and to offer WIC for the people that use that program was a huge achievement for us. We've been working on this, doing some of the back-end work for this for years. And when we started working with the WIC office and bringing that program into our store, we actually changed what is WIC eligible in the state. So now a lot of the products that that were not part of that program before, because we joined the system, because we started feeding them information and feeding them data about our shoppers, we're actually able to get a lot more of the products that you normally find in the co-op added to the WIC program, which has paved the way for now. I believe all the other food co-ops in Maine are exploring or in the process of bringing WIC online. So it's a huge win for our co-op, and I'm really proud. Everybody on the management team that worked to help bring WIC online, I'm very proud of it, and it's a huge achievement for us. Let's do next slide. Common sense donations. So Susan mentioned the $73,514 in common sense donations to local nonprofits, and that is not the co-op donating that. That is all of you. That is the owners and the shoppers coming in and just rounding up. But when I look nationwide, when I look at other co-ops, our co-op does so much more in common sense donation than just about any other co-op, and the only ones that are in the ballpark for donating as much as we do are much larger than us. So that's another point of pride for us and how much that we donate back to the community. Next slide. So this is kind of a mixed bag of success. So this is EBT SNAP sales by year. And the thing that, when we're trying to gauge where our community is and where the needs of our community are, the drastic uptick in EBT SNAP sales from 2020 to 2023 it's over doubled in just a short amount of time. To me, it says that there's needs in this community that are increasing, and that we are rising to the challenge of meeting those needs. All right, how am I on? Okay, I'm good on time. All right, renovation update. Next slide, Mike. Next slide. All right, so this is an Epictetus quote that I've kind of been spreading around everywhere lately. So, no greater thing is created suddenly any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. To me, this is the essence of our renovation project. So, just for a little background, so I became GM in late 2015. In 2016, in the fall of 2016, the board and I started discussing in earnest like what it would take to pull off a renovation or an expansion project at the co-op. So many iterations of this project over the years, so much time and energy spent doing feasibility study and trying to find what is the right project for us. I mean, I get salty sometimes about like, oh man, I wish we would have done this before COVID. I wish we would have, if we had moved forward with the project a few years ago, it would have been a different project. It would have been a different price tag. But that said, it wouldn't be the project we have now, which I think is the right project. So yeah, it has taken time for this to bear fruit, but we're so close to being complete, and I think we should all be really proud of what we've been able to do with the project that we have. All right, next slide. All right, so we are just finishing up week 42. I don't know if, I'm assuming everybody has been to the co-op recently, but the big milestones that we had glass and doors put in the new cafe, dairy coolers and freezers are in place and are starting to get hooked into our new refrigeration rack. Customer restrooms nearly complete. Our entire sprinkler system, so the building did not have a sprinkler system in it, so now it does, and it's nearly complete, and they're doing pressure testing this coming week. New HVAC, so all the new HVAC is hooked up, and all the ductwork is complete. Our electrical switchgear, which was one of the big pieces of equipment that was delaying the project, was this: we need to bring in new power, and we had to order a switchgear, and the delays on that piece of equipment potentially could have held up the project, but it just showed up at our door the other day, which was great. And the vertical lift tower, which one of the pieces of this project that was very important to me right from the start was trying to eliminate the way that we were receiving and how it was a potentially unsafe condition for our workers. And the solution that we decided on was this vertical lift. Having the vertical lift tower built and be ready to install it is a huge achievement for us. Next slide. All right, and here's some pictures. On the left there, you can see on the left you can see the cafe with the glass and the new doors. The second picture there is our new shop for me, our curbside bump out, the vertical lift towers. The next picture, and then the last one there is the refrigeration rack. So previously, all of our coolers and refrigeration ran on independent compressors inside the building in a dusty room that really challenged them, and they were all mix and match pieces. All of that is going to be running off this new outside refrigeration rack, which will be much easier to maintain and should run much more efficiently than what we had before. So, all right, next slide. All right, so far, $1.6 million is in owner loans and $2.2 million in bank loans. That's what we've spent on the project thus far. I don't think I have a slide of this. So there's a tracking sheet that I've shared with all of our lenders, that I've shared with the board of directors, with our construction partners, and it is updated consistently every time a requisition comes in. So we're closely monitoring every dollar that is spent on this project. Next slide. All right, and starting, it kind of started last week, but officially starting tomorrow, we're going to be entering phase 3 of our project. So 3.1, that first phase, we're going to be taking, the construction company is going to be taking the front of house, replacing the glass in the front of the store, putting in, taking out the flooring, polishing the concrete, taking care of the ceiling, painting the ceiling, all the new data lines and electrical running into the front of house, putting the new cash registers in. All of that's going to happen in 3.1. Once that part is complete, then we're going to wall off sort of the middle of the store in 3.2. And then in 3.3, we'll finish taking the back of house. So there will be 3 phases of construction between now and probably the end of April to accomplish those 3 different phases. But as we'll be building as we go, so once the 3.1 is done, we'll go in and rebuild the front end the way it's going to be in the final store. Once 3.2 is done, we'll rebuild that with our new bulk section, our new wellness section, and then 3.3 will be sort of that final push where we'll put the last of the grocery and produce coolers in. Oh my goodness, I'm done. All right, next slide, and this should be John, I believe.
Wow, I realize it's like, you know, see things. All right. All right. Well, I'm here to talk about the Treasurer's Report. First of all, I want to let everybody know we really have quite a little team. Our Finance Committee has Ernie Cooper and Jim Miller. Both of them have been previous treasurers, so they really come with a lot of experience. Got Colin over there on the right. And we've got Matt McConnell, who has been on our board for quite some time, but he's providing us assistance. And of course, we've got Gina, who's in the audience. Raise your hand. Yeah, she's been a staff person, which is really good, giving us a little perspective also on what we're doing. I know it's a lot of numbers here. You've been seeing quite a lot, and I'm going to repeat some of them. But the point is that the Finance Committee looks at those same numbers that Doug has provided you, but we study them from the perspective as providing a review, and we make recommendations to the board. So we look at these numbers, which Doug provides a lot more numbers than what he showed here, but we meet every month and go over the numbers. We also work with a CPA who provides an independent financial review of all the numbers. I'm going to basically talk about the basic things. I'm going to provide, looking at the health of our system here. Look a little bit at a P&L, profit loss. Gives you an idea of basically our pulse of the system. I'll give a balance sheet review, which is our overall, physical, our overall health. And lastly, I'll talk about the oxygen that we all need in a business, and that's our cash on hand. So the next slide, please. So these are numbers that Doug has really already provided. Clearly, one of the concerns that our board will come right up with, well, gee, that's not good. We lost money this year. And is that a good feeling? Of course not. But we look at this from the perspective that half the year we were under construction, and it was anticipated. I'll talk a little bit more towards the end of this. But our pro forma, our effort to, when we started this project, our predictions of how we were going had really predicted that we were going to have a downtime, particularly when people were here in November and realized there was hardly any place to even park to be there. So I think basically, this isn't a surprise. The good news is our sales have been increasing regularly. And one of the areas that we look at is in our operating expenses. So we'll spend time on that. The next slide. So, I guess again, this is the overall physical picture. We're saying we're roughly over $5 million right now. And of course, our assets have to be equal to our equity plus our liabilities. This is healthy. We still haven't taken all the money that we've borrowed yet. So by the end of this project, obviously, we're going to be worth, we'll be worth more. That's where we are. The next slide, please. So really what's important, I think, is, I look at, to me, one of the more important indicators, if you have key indicators, are days of cash on hand. Typically, a business like ours would like to have maybe 10 days of cash on hand. That's a good number, and you can see we're at 64. That's excellent. One of the criteria that we'll be following, very carefully over the years, particularly as we are renovated and we're building ourselves back, okay, is that we always want to have, that's one of the most important key indicators that we can have, is our ability to pay our bills off. The next slide. So key indicators, that's another area that we're watching every month. Doug provides us with a lot of key indicators. But right now where we're looking at is the current ratio, which is, most businesses look at that. Typically a good business would have a ratio that's greater than, say, 1.25, say. That would be a good number, and we're there. Debt, okay, which is certainly an issue now where we're borrowing money. Your debt to equity, a good business would have one that was less than, say, 2. So again, we feel very confident with where we are with this. And lastly, EBITDA. Now that's not a name that everybody really talks about, okay? If you take away interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and patronage, what you're really looking at now is just the full operations itself. Basically, income minus expenses. And that's really our, because we've got a lot of loans out there, we're dealing with debt. If you just take that out of the picture, how is our business working? A good number for a grocery business like ours would be greater than 0.5. So again, that's good. We feel happy about that. Next slide. And this is where, the real work is, for our finance committee, is looking, actually this year he's going to provide us 2 different budgets because things are changing so rapidly. It's really hard to say you can predict the whole year. You really can't predict how sales are going to be when the parking lot is basically closed. So we compare what was actually budgeted to what we're actually doing. And you'll see here, look, I know these numbers are getting hard for people to read, particularly if you're looking at the yellow and you're in the very back. But the point that I want to make is that our sales were almost $300,000 more than we expected. Our gross profit was maybe $30,000 more than we were expecting. Our expenses were somewhat higher, but we had a really decent gross margin. The bigger number here really is the net. We were predicting that at this stage in our growth, we would be at minus 2% on net income. And so less than half of that. We feel things are really going good. There's been scary times with so much happening, but we feel we're really strongly on track. We also do go through, we do have an auditor that reviews this information. And so how good were our numbers when we hired an independent review? And gosh, our numbers were right on. I'll give an example because I like to look at cash. The difference between our independent reviewers' numbers and ours was 0.02% difference. So it's tight. We're keeping good control, okay, of the money. I think we have a really good sense of where we are. Next slide. I know people aren't going to be able to read this one, but it does give you an idea of this sort of detail that's involved. There are a lot of numbers that we look at. And I'll give credit to Jim Miller here, who's had a good experience, in working with major renovations and big projects. And he had this idea that we should, have some sort of a tracking summary where all this information that Doug feeds in daily into a computer system is, we got a summary table here. And one of the things that I think a lot of us were concerned about when we first built this, this project was a so-called contingency, because we've been watching prices just climb up every time we get another cost, for anticipated cost for this project. Inflation was high, we were going through COVID, it was hard to do. So we designed in this project approximately $1 million. You can't really see that very well in this picture, but this number here, right down there, it's $959,000. That's what we put into this project as a contingency. And where we are right now, approximately 60% of the project has been completed. And the amount of contingency that we have left, so in other words, we've used our project, we've got 39% of the project left, okay, 61% completed. We've got 37% of the contingency that is still left, which suggests very strongly that we're right on target. Now, you can't be exact in all these things. Doug's working with the team, doing value engineering consistently, and there are change orders, but we seem to be right on track, which is exactly what we want to be. The last slide. And this is no, that was the one before that. There we go. That's the one I want you to see. Now, this is that EBITDA again, all right? But to give you an idea, we have what we call a pro forma. This is a model that predicts the future, which no one can really completely predict the future. But as a result of strong support we've got from NCG, for instance, NCG-DC, who actually has done a lot of the design, they put together a model using information they've gotten from other co-ops who have gone through renovations, their predictions of how well we would be doing. And so when we look about our concern with that negative income right now, it's pretty much right where we predicted it would be. And it's our anticipation that if we're staying on track, we'll bounce out of this. And we're not sure that the next year we'll be looking at profits and giving our owners patronage dividends again, but we see it coming soon. That's the end of my presentation. And if you have questions, we're around, and the rest of our team here is available too. I think everyone on our finance committee has studied these numbers and can talk to you, pretty well about what's going on. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. So now it's the Q&A part, and I'll be passing around the microphone, and want to ask folks on Zoom, if you have questions, you can type them into the chat, and Colin will let me know when questions are coming up and can relay them. And yeah, we can have microphones for the board here. Here you go, Doug. One over here. There you go. Okay, anybody have a question or comment? Yep. Start in the back. You were first.
Thanks. I could stand here and complain, and I could pass upon to you folks all complaints that you've probably heard anyhow. The noise, the dust, the vibration, the blast of cold, the blast of heat, dust. Renovation's never fun. But I thought about it and I said, how is my experience of that? I'm there 20 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, maybe an hour if I have a big shop. There are folks who spend 40, 50 hours a week in the co-op. Top, bottom, left, right, sideways, right next to the vibrations and stuff. So I want to say thank you to the people who've had to put up with it a lot more than shoppers do. So staff, management, you know who you are. But having said that, I remembered at the bottom of every grocery slip that you get at the end, there's something called customer rewards. Is that, I have the right title for that? Yeah. Some money that you've accumulated from your patronage, so to speak. And you have ways to use that. You could use it next time you shop. You could have deducted. Some people need that. You got a budget to work under. Other people, money isn't as much of an issue. So my suggestion would be there's something called the Employee Appreciation Fund. So whenever it hits a dollar amount, pick it, $25, $50, whatever point you notice it. Sometimes the cashiers ask you, do you want to use your customer rewards now? Say, no, transfer it please to the Employee Appreciation Fund. And every single employee of the co-op gets a percentage of that at the end of the month. It might be $1, it might be 12 cents, it might be $5. I wouldn't mind $5 more in my paycheck simply because I put up with the noise, the vibration, the dust, the cold, the heat, etc. So thank you all again for that.
Yeah, Doug had said that they were doing the lift on the side, but I'm still not exactly clear when that is actually going to be operational. I know last year's annual meeting, we talked about it, and so it's something that I think is very high priority, and I'm hoping that it'll be this week, this month.
I wish. So the vertical lift is on the property, so we have all of the mechanics for it. The thing that we were waiting for was that switch gear. So like initially, so that the delivery of that piece of electrical equipment kept getting slid back and slid back and slid back, and we didn't have a good date. Now that that's in hand, all of the timelines have shifted a little bit closer. So hopefully, I mean, I'm not going to throw out a date here, but I would say sooner rather than later, we should be able to install that vertical lift. Yeah. Sooner rather than later. We were thinking that the switchgear might not have shown up until June, maybe, end of May, June. And the fact that it showed up the other day kind of changes everything. So our general contractor put out a timeline, some timeline updates this past week, but I would say probably in the next week or so, I'll have a better idea of when that vertical lift can go in. But yeah, we have it. It's on the property. We just need to get it hooked up.
It's Glenn. I just wanted to offer my heartfelt thanks and appreciation for the board and for the staff for surviving first COVID and now the difficulties of the renovation. But I moved here decades ago because of the co-op, and I'm just so pleased that it has prospered and done so well. And I know all of you have worked so hard. So I just want to say that I appreciate all of you on the board as well as the staff. Thank you very much.
And I did forget to ask for people to say your name first, so thanks for.
Hi, Judy Zacci. I guess there's a theme going here because I've been going back and forth for 15 years to New Jersey, and then about a year and a half ago, or 16 years, finally made the move permanently, and the co-op was a big reason why I chose to do this chapter here, so thank you. I want to say that on the front line and the behind the scene line did an amazing job, you know, all through the renovation. It was a pleasant experience, and then now I'm looking even at the business side of things, and I can't even believe you did that well. So congratulations. I have 2 questions. One is, well, I miss terribly the cafe, okay, but I understand, no problem. About how many seats are going to be in there? Because it's gonna, like, I went there when there were hardly any, but now everyone's going to go because of how beautiful it is. And my second question is, and I think fiscally you guys did amazing. How do you intend on, with the net loss, which is not big at all for what's been happening, how do you intend on making what's the plan for the mortgage payments of this?
Yep. All right. So the first question was about seating in the cafe. So we haven't finalized how much seating there is going to be in the cafe. Like, we haven't picked the exact tables or anything like that. There won't be as much as there was in the previous cafe because there isn't that. In the previous cafe, there was a bench that ran the entire perimeter, and anybody could sit there. But we are prioritizing outdoor seating as well. So there's a new patio off on the left-hand side of the cafe. Plus, there will be seating in front of the store. So, you know, I don't know exactly how many seats there's going to be in there, but at least in the warmer months, there should be plenty of seating. And yeah, I hope that people flock there for the cafe. The second question about the mortgage payments, right? So John alluded to the pro forma model that we use to do our projections. That model, when we're feeding in, you know, the sales growth that we're projecting for what this project's going to be in, plus all the debts, how we're servicing all that debt, the sales increase that we are projecting post renovation is very modest. It's a very conservative estimate on how much our sales increase will be when the store is renovated, and we're still able to service all of that debt. So as long as everything stays fairly on track, which it has thus far, it doesn't look like we're going to have any trouble servicing debt or paying back any of those loans. My estimate, and I think that we're going to far exceed what that sales projection was, but it's good to know that, you know, like last year we did 4.6% sales growth, and I think the first year post renovation we were budgeted to do 4.3%. So if we do even as well as we did during construction, we should be fine when it comes to servicing debt, and then that carries out through the entirety of the model. The model goes out 10 years on projections for sales and expenses.
Thanks. I'm Sarah Strauss, and we are more people who certainly included the existence of the co-op as one of our main reasons for moving in this direction. But one of the things that interests me, and perhaps our web manager here who is out there in Zoom land, because we're not seeing anything of our Zoom folks, how many people are actually online with us today? 12, so same or less than what we got here as far as people who aren't staff and other. And so that sort of opens one of my questions. I was just in contact with Susan and Jamie earlier when I realized, and to be fair, I have not been paying as much attention as I should have been, but realized that we didn't have as many people as we could have running for the board, and indeed not even filling out the board seats. And we've got the choir here, right? People who are, like us, really committed to the co-op. But I'm really wondering, when we look at these projections of growth and what has, in fact, not just projections, but what has been happening, who are these folks? Where are they? And why are they not feeling a need to be connected in these ways? Do they really, so there's a lot of questions about how we are reaching people and connecting with those new folks in order to have more of them. So and I don't know whether that 12 is typical for the last few years, since we have now learned to be hybrid in Zoomlandia with the in-person things as well, or whether that's low, high, compared to, previous years. Not 2020, everybody was hybrid, remote then, but I don't know. So.
Yes, Susan suggested that I could answer that. I'm Ernie Cooper, and I'm chair of the Board Development Committee, and one of the things that committee is responsible for is making sure the board elections get run each year. We have an election every year. I can't recall when we've had one that was a contested election. We always have more seats than we have candidates. And that's not because we don't try. We made an extra effort this year to recruit people to run for the board seats. And we do have some great candidates. I'll reintroduce them later, but we have Todd Bloom and Charles Sterback, who are potentially new to the board. We have Valerie Tate, who's running for re-election. But we have 5 vacant seats, so they're all going to be elected. And we don't like that situation. We tried some things to increase interest in running for the board that we hadn't tried before this year. I have to say they weren't necessarily successful. We're going to have an evaluation after the election's over. But gee, if any, we've got a lot of interested people here. You can all run for the board, and it's not like you have to launch a huge campaign. You have to be interested and willing to work. That's it. So we'll keep trying, but that's it's not for lack of trying.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm so glad you brought this up because, I think all of us are concerned about that. And, one thing from kind of organizational perspective is that, when things are rough and when there's controversy and when there are decisions to be made and more people show up, they want to express themselves and have their say. So on the one hand, you could look at this and say, well, there might be a good side to this, that people are okay with what's going on and happy with what's happening, and so don't feel like they really have to be here. On the other hand, I don't think it's the healthiest thing for the organization. So, I'm hoping we'll all be thinking about that. As Susan mentioned, there's a plan, now that we're pivoting from 6 years of thinking about renovation to the future and what our vision is, the strategic work that we need to do should also focus on that. How do we increase our owner engagement and community involvement and connection so that it doesn't just drop away? And as I've heard from some of you before the meeting started, how do we maintain that quality of the cooperative that our founding members started as we expand? So these are important questions that we really need to be paying attention to.
Yeah. And we do welcome, if thoughts come up for anyone, please contact us and on email.
Susan, can I say one?
Oh, yeah.
So one more thing that I think that we need to keep in mind, we're a consumer cooperative, right? And the thing about consumer cooperatives is that we are open to people participating however they can, right? So every single person that comes in and signs up to be an owner and continues to make their equity payment, continues to come in and buy their groceries every day, they're participating in the cooperative, right? And would we want more engagement? Would we want more people running for the board? Absolutely. But I don't want to diminish the fact that this past year, people still come in the store, right? And I would say, part of our responsibility of the people that are here in the room and that are engaged and invested in the democracy is to go out and talk to your friends about it and get the other people that that are members of the co-op who, maybe they don't, maybe they shop once a week, invite them to a board meeting, show up to a board meeting, invite them to an event. When we have, part of our responsibility as owners is to encourage people to be more engaged in the co-op. So I'm so happy that the people that are in this room are in this room today, and I'm happy that these are faces that I see shopping in the store, and that there are a ton of other people that also have continued to support us by shopping during this whole project. So to answer your question, I think last year we had 50 in the room and probably 30 on Zoom, probably for the last annual meeting. Does that sound right?
So I'd like to follow up on that. As co-ops have evolved, how long ago did membership participation as volunteers disappear?
Sure. So that, from what I have read and I've understood, so there was a board. It went to a vote in the '90s where they dropped volunteerism as a requisite for ownership.
Okay, because I've seen that, being a lifelong member at the Good Turn as well, watching that happen. And I've listened to what you've said. Great, everything is amazing, and that you have the numbers and the foresight, that you're backing up here. Let me see if I can make a correlation that I've been watching. So when you reached out to the community for loans, those loans came in, when I watched the thermometer, in like 2 weeks. Wasn't it 2 or 3 weeks? It was quick.
2 months.
2 months. It felt like 2 weeks. So, but at any rate, that came in a timely fashion, and I don't know how many of those people are sitting among us. And I think we're at a point where people are busy. People are waiting for the other shoe to drop from pandemic, and many, many businesses, retail and otherwise, are suffering from not enough employees and not enough participation. So, looking for ways to engage people more, I think is definitely something to keep doing. But I also think it's the time that we're at, and I think some people are just happy at this point to put their money, to what their needs are, and less participation. And I'm gonna throw one your way. I mean, I think they're also in awe of what this has become, and that it's a reality. Because I said this to a board member recently. I said, when this started and it was really gaining traction, and we had the pandemic and everything, I thought it was the craziest endeavor on the planet. And since then, it's been this kind of futuristic piece for me that says, yes, we do keep doing. Yes, we do keep going. We don't let circumstance, global and otherwise, slow us down. And so there's been a beacon piece to watching this evolve and watching it come into reality. And I thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Am I live? I was a board member a long time ago, and I think Glenn Montgomery, he was on the board. It was at Lower Main Street. I was at Upper Main Street and went to Lower. And I remember I was probably on the board when this volunteer thing came around. And it was unmanageable. Everyone had a way of getting credit for hours not worked. They would donate a painting or something and want 5 years worth of volunteer time. And and then you don't want to take away, you do have people who work for the co-op, and that staff wants to be paid. They don't want to find out that their job was just given to a bunch of people who are not going to do it as well. So those are my memories. Glenn, do you have any memories you want to share?
Well, I have memories of packing raisins in small bags and dusting shelves. I do think that working hours in the store, it did put me, well, not more in touch with the store, but it did. I saw things from a different perspective. Having said that, I'm just as happy not dusting shelves and packing raisins into small bags. I'll echo what Valerie said in that you get the biggest turnout at these annual meetings when things aren't going well, and I think So things are going well. So the turnout is not that good. However, I don't think the co-op is so important to 5,000 plus people. And I've always been mystified myself that more people don't show up one time a year for the annual meeting, because I know how much the co-op means to so many people. So it's not the fault of the board or any committees on the board. For some reason, people just don't take the time to come, and I wish they would.
Yeah, hi, Ed Sheridan. I just had one, just a quick question regarding the financials that John put up. I'd just be interested, do you have that chart, the one that we couldn't read? It looked interesting, and is that going to be available to the owners?
So there's a printout in the back of the store, Edward, of all the slides, and the summary chart is on that slide.
Oh, okay, all right. Super, thanks.
Questions? Comments? Anyone online? Yeah. I'm going to let one with them.
Thanks. I just want to congratulate you in the first place on the great job you've done in keeping the co-op functioning and making all these futuristic changes at the same time. It's very, very well done. Now, this is a problem that I have that predates the whole renovation thing, so I don't think you can blame it on that. It's a small issue, but it's an important one to me and probably to other people who also try to find as many ways as they can to buy at the co-op rather than some other store, something they could get maybe even cheaper or somehow in some other store. So it's about Sprouts. Hannaford has Sprouts every day, but I'd rather not go up there and get them there if I can get them at the co-op.
I would like you to get them at the co-op too, Chris. So we cut out 12 feet of the produce section, so we shrunk everything down in order to, for the first part of this project, and all of that is coming back. The produce department is getting a much larger prep area, a much larger refrigerated storage area. We're getting all new display shelves for the produce department, so I'll make a note that we need to carry more Sprouts. Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Hi, I'm Brenda. I just want to reiterate what a lot of people have said and thank you all for all your work. And it's, I work across the street at the library, and it's just fun every day. I come over, I take pictures. I'm like, look at this, look at this. And I haven't been there in 2 days, and I'm going to go after this meeting because a lot has happened in 2 days. And just thank you all so much. I know it's been a lot of work, and you think about it, it's on your mind all the time. I'm hoping you're sleeping well, Doug, and and all the rest of you. You've been putting a lot of work into it, and we really appreciate it.
I'd like to speak to a personal elephant in the room, and it's about the divisions that the project has, should we say, engendered. And my own struggle with it and where I've come to. Coming from the Good Turn Co-op, where I was painting floors for my, annually for my discount, and people were getting 25% off for taking the compost home to their gardens. I mean, it was an interesting time. And then I was there for the total move, renovation, raising of the building that was on the property, and so on. And that, and then this co-op, and watching over the years, and the want for the way it used to be is so strong in many of us, and to the point of what do you call it, home buying clubs and so on are starting to pop up again because there's been a loss in the growth. And I think so often when there's a growth at the manner and the caliber that we're talking millions now, that there is a piece that's challenging for those of us who were the granolas, who were, just happy to be able to be in a small rented space and know that the food that we've got, we can count on. Watching the growth, the piece that goes with this is nobody stopped the growth. That's where I finally came to terms with my own losses, is exactly what you're talking about board members and about participation. That we would have had to have said, we don't want to grow beyond we don't want to carry beyond whatever. And when, as members, we don't engage that, we don't keep it in the forefront, and growth gives us what we've got here, and the Good Turn is struggling with their what's next. It's one of those unfortunate, painful longings that, I came here in '87 was the first time I came up from Rhode Island, and I'm Lynn, I didn't say that, I'm a Lynn member, and I stepped foot in the co-op when it was on Main Street where the green store is. Yeah, and I'm 5 foot tall, and those funky 6 foot ceilings were just right, and all those worn floorboards and everything. I was really moved to it, and there is pain and grief and sadness in what it has become. But also, like I said, the reality is there wasn't enough of an affront of people who wanted to create a ceiling that was where it would always stay. And so I see it at a stage now where the growth is there, we've got a lot to be proud of, we've got people doing a great job up front, and it is going to birth some, home-based buying clubs and so on, and so be it. That's kind of how it all came up to. And then the Hannaford's piece, I've said to many people, and I'll close with, the piece about Hannaford's is Hannaford's built up on Route 1 for a very smart reason. The co-op was a hub. And if they didn't get that Route 1 traffic, they weren't going to survive, And so I think there's another piece of perspective here worth taking in. But again, growth, even when our teens go through teens, and even when they become young adults, you can look at where are we at our coming up on 50 years. There's some real adolescents still going around at 50.
Thank you, Lynn.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I just want to, I'm glad I came today. I was not going to come because I had a lot of cleaning up to do at home. But I'm glad I took the time. So one of the questions you all point to me is how much board retention there is. Your comment was really insightful. Because I see that it's only Valerie that is going to be re-elected. So I was wondering about board retention, and I just want to share my own experience. So shopping at the co-op, I have stopped shopping at the co-op. I used to spend 100% of our grocery at the co-op, and I guess now I only do maybe 20%. The prices have gone up so much. I favor the Brook Co-op. I even go sometimes somewhere else. And I've learned also to shop at farms. But I just want to say that the only reason that I'm dragged to the co-op is for the local product that you have. At the moment, I'm in love with those crackers. And that's really what drags me in. So I hope you just keep that good job going. I also have one more comment, which is I saw that your numbers. I'm a number person. You have so it seems that you grow from 11.3 to 11.9. But when I'm looking at my basket, it has also grown. Like instead of spending $20, maybe I'll spend like $30 or $40, and I don't really get much more than what I used to get. I'm wondering if you have, if you calculate the inflation, within your, so you would in fact be down to what you had last year, because I don't think we only had a 0.6% inflation. And so that was just like, and it's only comment, I don't have any really questions, but it's looking to me that it's not really as up as we would then. Have you taken all that inflation thing into consideration because I haven't heard about it in your presentation or analysis of the numbers. So,
Doug or John, do you want to speak to the
inflation?
Yeah. Inflation.
Are we factoring inflation into the numbers that we're reporting out today? No, I mean you could theoretically. I think when we're tracking basket size and customer count, which we do, we look at that monthly, Nancy, and as long as we are seeing both of those numbers increases, so yeah, do things cost more this year than they cost last year? Yes, absolutely. All things do, right? So all of your expenses would go up as well. So, yeah. So I would say, we had 4.6% growth in the past year, right? Inflation was probably, it could be all of that, it could be a chunk of that, but we're also seeing, number of transactions increasing, we're seeing basket size increase. Our margins are staying fairly consistent, right? So I think all of those things, contribute to growth, even with inflation taken out.
Yeah, it's a good question. From the perspective of the Finance Committee, the pro forma, the pro forma does take into account inflation. So we go through that. It's sort of a once of the year sort of thing. We're not doing that pro forma continuously. Clearly, we're looking at. I don't know. We were just looking at the numbers the other day. All this equipment that we're putting in, we're going to save some $30,000 a year just on our energy use. We're also looking at 30% larger spacing. So we're hoping that, we've been operating with a very inefficient system. No elevator, running up and down the stairs or using a forklift to move things from one floor to the next. How efficient can you really be with a system like that? So we're hoping that a modern store, with efficient systems, will allow us to be able to operate with a better gross margin, and with a better gross margin, we hope that we will be able to be some lower price. We're also looking at adding some conventional food. That could be a no-no to many people, but we realize that we have members in our community that are looking for lower costs and maybe aren't so interested in the organic local side. So these are controversial topics that we sometimes can spend a lot of time discussing, but our overall goal is to make this to be a community resource. So there's still a lot that we can do, I think, particularly with the additional floor space. We've got refrigerators that aren't working because the door fell off of them, all right? You're not really proud of that, okay? But we're looking at building an efficient system. It's been rebuilt from the bottom up. It's going to be really a totally different store.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. On the board retention, the only other board member who was up for re-election was Sasha Breus, and she's starting a new career, so she's decided to put her time into that. Also, I wanted to mention, and Doug, correct me or explain further if I misstate this, but my understanding is that we're going to be going into a different tier with our distributor. Oh. Is that right? And does that mean that because of that, our costs will lower a little bit on products?
I could, right? So, how best to explain this? All right, so the way that our contract works with our largest distributor, the more that we purchase, the smaller percentage we pay on top of the cost of those goods in order to retail them, right? So like if we buy $50,000 a week from UNFI, who is our major distributor. They tack on let's say it's a 9%, they call it cost plus, a 9% or something on top of that. The more that we purchase, the smaller that percentage gets, right? So if we, as we grow, like talking about growth, the more that we grow, the more that we're able to purchase, the more buying power we have as a cooperative, the better prices we're able to give our shoppers on the things that they buy every day. And consequently, like the more margin dollars we have, then we're able to do things like pay better wages and pay better benefits to workers, and return more to our owners through those programs. So, yeah, the more, growth is a weird thing, right? So I think that, like Lynn, before I came to Belfast, I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was a worker at the East End Food Co-op in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for 10 years before I came here. That is another co-op that came out of the 70s and definitely had a pretty crunchy feel when I showed up. And watching how the market has changed, watching how cooperatives have changed, like it's pretty remarkable in 20 years, like 20 years working in co-ops. That said, the thing that doesn't change and the thing that actually benefits a lot from growth is the model, right? So our consumer co-ops now different than they were back in the 70s? Absolutely. The world is a completely different place. The food system is a completely different place. There's so much, like the niche that we filled and the needs that we were able to meet in the community are completely different now than they were then. But the fact that the model still exists, that the cooperative model of doing business that is democratic and that serves the community and, at its baseline, strives to meet the needs of the community, that doesn't change. And with growth, like the more that we're able to do that, I mean, I've talked to the board about this a lot, like the sky is the limit of what we can do as a cooperative. The sky is the limit, and where we can go and how much more, how much bigger we can make the cooperative economy in this state and in the nation. So, yeah, I know that it's different, and I know that growth sometimes can be a scary word. But when I think about growing the cooperative economy and growing more democracy in our consumerism, like to me that's good growth, as long as we're doing it smart and as long as we're keeping people engaged. That didn't pertain to that question, but yeah, okay.
That's great. And I just had one more response about the board retention. That's a good point. We've been thinking a lot about that, and one thing we did this year was to increase the amount of outreach and connection with people who are considering running for the board, so that folks understand more about how that works, and hopefully that will help with our board retention as well. Okay, one last, and then.
Yeah, so this has to do with branding. And the flyers, the sale flyers, and when we go out to a survey, has this co-op logo that's not us. And can you tell me where we are? Are we under an umbrella of
Sure.
some other? Okay.
Yeah, so there, our co-op, and actually Good Turn, Rising Tide, Portland, and Blue Hill, we're all of our co-ops are part of a larger national co-op of co-ops, right? So that co-op, it's called National Co-op Grocers. It is all of the owners of that co-op are co-ops throughout the entire country. There's right now 144, I think, individual co-ops as part of that. It's the same structure as us. There's a board of directors that is general managers, and they call them designated representatives. Those are the people that serve on the board of directors for that cooperative. Under that, they're shared service cooperatives, so they're the ones that negotiate the contract that we have with our distributor. So taking that, all of that power of these 144 co-ops, putting that purchasing power towards a purchasing contract so that we can bring all of our costs down. On top of that, they also provide, marketing assistance, or they helped us out with our pro forma, like when we needed financial expertise, when we need HR support. They provide all those services to their owners. And I mean, my co-op in Pittsburgh was a member of NCG when I showed up at this co-op in 2011. We were not members of NCG at that time, and part of me was really excited about that, because like, there's this big overarching monster co-op, and like I want to see what it's like to be in a nitty gritty stand on your own kind of co-op. And within a year of being here, I was like, oh, this is the difference. This is what it looks like when you don't have support, right? And we joined in 2012, and if you can look back. You can look back through board minutes. You can look back through rootstock articles, whatever. But the world around us changed in 2012. Like the market changed, and I think that if the board and the management at the time hadn't had the foresight to join NCG, when we joined NCG, I think we would be in a much different place now, and not in a good way. They're the people that I work with. They're the people that I interact with. They're amazing. They're the best in the business. Their hearts are like they could be off making tons of money doing what they do for big businesses, but they're interested in their hearts are in co-ops, and they inspire me, and I don't think that we would be where we are now and would have seen all of the things that we have seen over the last few years without their support. But that's why that branding looks the same. That's why if you go into Good Turn, or if you go into Rising Tide, sometimes some of the signage will look the same. It's all because of that bigger co-op of co-ops that this brings all of those co-ops together. So,
Thank you. I think we are out of time for questions or comments. Thank you for your questions. And if something comes up, please email us at board@belfast.coop or reach out to us through the store. I think next on the agenda is Ernie about the election.
Yeah, well, we've already talked several times about the election, so I'll keep this short. We are having an election like we every year we have an election. We've typically had that start at the annual meeting. I guess they used to vote at the annual meeting. We don't do that anymore, but voting starts at the end of this meeting. So it's online voting again this year. I've introduced the candidates, Valerie Tate, Todd Bloom, Charles Stierbach. If you want to talk with them and you haven't done it already, they've each said they'd stick around for a while after the meeting, and so grab them and see what they're thinking. And I said we got 5 openings, we had 3 candidates. Obviously, they're all going to get elected, but they're only elected if we have a valid vote. And according to the bylaws, the voting is only valid if we have 10% of our active owners voting. For us, that means right now 518 of you need to vote, or else we don't have an election. So please take the time. You will get, when you get home, or maybe it's on your phone right now, you'll get an email that links you into the voting process. It's online voting. If you don't like online voting, or if you don't get the email, you can vote on a paper ballot. There will be paper ballots available in the store, but we would prefer that you vote online if you can. And so that's all going to start, like I say, after this meeting. And please take the time to get to know your candidates before you vote. They're all here. So, okay, thank you.
Great. So I guess that's it for this evening. So today, it's not evening yet. Yeah, light. So thank you all for coming, and hope to see you at future board meetings, or we have an owner engagement committee. If anyone's interested in getting involved in other ways, let us know. So thanks.